Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final day of the third innings for the second test match. I'm your host, Varun. I'm joined, as always, by Shayan Ahmed Khan. And India have completed a dominant win. In fact, it's their biggest away win in terms of runs. Shayan, how do you feel?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing victory for India. First of all, I think we have to say that this is not a moral victory for India simply because they didn't pick specialist bowlers. But yeah, absolutely brilliant performance from Akash Deep, 10 wickets for the match. And again, another brilliant performance from Siraj as well in the first innings. Those two with the ball really set up this test match for India. And then, of course, with the bat, Shubman Gill with that record breaking performance of 430 runs in a single test match. Just like so many outliers, so much to talk about in this test match. But I think we'll start with today. And it really was Akash Deep who opened this game up for India, wasn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree. He was absolutely fantastic. Again, we assumed that there's a flat pitch, but he still got the ball to move. Again, the fantastic dismissal of Harry Brook, I think
Yeah,
that one really stands out, doesn't it?
absolutely. It was like a carbon copy of the first innings, right? Almost.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. Again, so answering Karthik's question, you guys are too stuck up on picking specialist bowlers. Oh, I'm sorry, we want to pick specialist bowlers in a test match. I didn't realize that was a controversial opinion.
I mean, even now, if you look at it, India took what? Like, it was two bowlers who took 17 wickets for India. How often is that going to happen? Let's just think about it like that. It
Yeah,
had to take
completely agree with.
an all-timer performance from Akashdeep in this test match, and Siraj had to pull off a great spell in the first innings. Only then have India been able to get a result out of this test match on a flat wicket. So you cannot underestimate the importance of bowling. And of course, the batters put up a brilliant performance. And that is why you have to think about why the batters have done so well. So you don't actually need that much batting depth. And we'll talk about the combinations and stuff in more detail. But absolutely brilliant performances from these three players. And today has to be for Akashdeep. What do you think stood out for you?
Yeah, again, it's as we just said, it is Akashdeep. Again, England, I just think I don't want to say they batted badly, but they didn't bat well today. I think that's what I would think about it. Because I think they just look lost. I don't. Again, we talked about this, right? Modern batters usually aren't very good at playing out the draw anymore because it's just a lost
Yeah.
skill, right? This is one of those test matches. Like, how do I explain? If this was like 20 years ago, like you'd just have like England would just finish this test match 300 for five, right? That's the kind of thing you would see, isn't it?
I know, I
Uh,
know.
yeah. So sorry, before you just answer anything, to answer Abhi's question, I forgot to mention this at the start. So Jared and Baron will be reviewing this test match tomorrow because Jared has to drive back from Edgbaston tonight.
Yeah. I think we can take DOF's question as well. How about Ben Stokes, and he averages what 20 against spin in the last few years, and I also agree. Like his gameplay against spin was very concerning today. I actually thought he started off quite well. He started off properly in that Ben Stokes block mode, and I did think that he could play a long innings. It didn't seem impossible. But the moment Jadeja came in and Jadeja spun the ball 4.8 degrees in his very first over, and Harsha Bhogle pointed that out in the commentary, and from there it was just like you knew that it was inevitable. Ben Stokes will get out to spin after a point, and that is what happens. And again, like fairly simple decision. Again, good smart work from Jadeja as well to finish that over on time so that they could get in another over. And then Washington again does it. Like Washington, so the off spinner does it against Ben Stokes once again. And yeah, definitely. And this is one reason why also we've been saying that Kuldeep Yadav would have been a threat, because Ben Stokes and Harry Brook do have their issues against spin in particular. But yeah, credit to Washington Sundar completely. And I think both the spinners actually bowled really well today. What were your thoughts on them in particular?
Yeah, I thought Jadeja was fantastic. I think he was a bit unlucky because there was a drop catch of his bowling as well,
Exactly.
right? And
Yeah.
it's just a weirdness. But again, like he was fantastic. He knew he was landing it in the rough straight away this test match instead of if you look at
Yeah.
like compared to the previous one where he just was looked a bit lost.
Hmm.
There was a clear plan from him. He stuck to it. You could argue he probably could have come around the wicket to the tail end right-handed batters. Like still kept bowling in the rough. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. But then
Hmm.
again, maybe that's just like he's just used to it at that point. He has his
Yeah.
reasons, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Completely understandable that. And so in the fourth innings of test matches in England, Jadeja has an economy rate of 2.52. That is a pretty solid mark, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's gone up in this after the whole baseballness, right? Again, I
Yeah,
think
kind
so.
of.
Yeah, it's harder and harder for you to be a defensive spinner when teams are attacking. I think you see this in white ball cricket as well, right? Defensive spinners usually just are being vanished out of existence for that very reason, right? Unless you can bat, That's the important part. And he can bat, so that is always going to be an advantage for him in a way. It isn't for like someone like Shoaib Bashir. It's pretty useless with the bat, unless except for today, of course, where it's fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, again, I think Jamie. We have to talk about Jamie
And
Smith
I
though,
think
from
now,
England's point of view, right?
exactly.
He was. How good was he?
Yeah.
I just thought I was like, oh, he's just going to get twin hundreds. I just thought it was inevitable. I didn't even think he was going to get out
Yeah.
again. Like, right?
Yeah. So he starts off, I think, also pretty well, and then after a point, like he was doing well even whenever he was defending, but then he just starts hitting Washington Sundar after a point, and then he starts playing attacking cricket. He's like, never mind, I'll just start hitting, and I think he batted very brilliantly today. And so today in his today's knock, he makes 35 runs on the offside and 53 on the onside. And I would be interested to see how much of this came versus the two spinners. So he makes 19 runs of Jadeja and 26 runs of Washington. That is a pretty good effort, right? For about 45 runs against spin, and he has also previously played a good innings in Pakistan, I believe, on a spinning wicket. Like in the third test in Rawalpindi, he made 89 runs. So Jamie Smith is clearly proving his credentials as a specialist batter at this point. Like, of course, he's a keeper batter, and I'm not saying that they have to promote him very up the order or anything like that just yet. But he is a very exciting prospect now for England in the years to come.
Yeah, I think Dio was mentioning that. Right? How angry must Smith be to be batting below Stokes? I said this yesterday. He should be batting above him. I think England should be doing that. But Stokes just isn't the same batter anymore, and you are wasting him a bit. I don't think he should bat above 6 for a few years anyway. Like, there's no rush, right? We just seem to just I'm like, just use him as a rookie batter for a few years as a keeping batter, right? Just fine. There's no rush, right? Give him that
Yeah.
graduation spot for like 1 or 2 years. Once Root calls it, which may be like 4 years later, then you can move him to number 4 and bring in another keeper. Right? That's the way I think England should do it. Whether they will do it like that, I don't know. Right?
Also depends on whether they get another batting talent who can really bat at number 4, like proper next big thing type of a player. So who knows what happens in that case? But yeah,
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So again, Shapnil is just saying Bumrah, Akashdeep, Siraj is a good lineup at Lords. The only thing I'm concerned about that is I think all of them want the new ball, and we know Akash is in. To answer Vignesh's question, I don't think he is very good with the old ball for whatever reason. It just doesn't suit his skill. I think he's probably a bit more like wobble ball dependent. So if you are wobble ball dependent, you probably need the new ball. And these Dukes balls just go soft very quickly, right after the 30th over.
absolutely.
Again, like the only reason he does get a wicket with the old ball is he's got one tailender and a Smith who, like, were just in like attack mode once the game was basically done, right?
Yeah. And this guy, he really doesn't know how to start pad tail end wickets at that well. He has what,
last I checked, it was
11 opening
117.
wickets now?
I think it was averaging 117 last I checked. It might have been like 55 now because he halved it because he got another wicket, right? Before that, I think he only
did.
had one tail end wicket. That's insane. Like, how the hell do you only have one tail end wicket as a bowler, right?
That is quite crazy, actually. And 11 of his wickets are openers. Then there's also a bunch of wickets from number 3, 4, 5, 6. Like, you just know that he's really good at batting. Like, he's really good at bowling against the top order batters and specifically against the left-handed batters. So, because he can come around the wicket and create that angle, which I think causes issues for batters. You saw the Duckett wicket, right? Yes, last night. And I think for Siraj, some people are saying he's a good first change bowler. That's what he was doing with Shami was in the team. I also agree with this. I think completely agree with this because
he was fourth change in one of the 2021 series, I think, when Ishanto and Shami both were playing, right? Which is insane.
You mean fourth bowler, right? Second change.
Yeah. Second change, sorry. Yeah. Not say fourth change, yes. Yes. I did mean that.
Exactly.
So I actually think we should
I have
just
also
give a
been
brief
talking
mention.
about...
Sorry. I was just saying, I think we should just give a brief mention to Prasidh Krishna. I actually think bowled really well in this innings. And today especially, right? Again, I think he just went for runs because he again switched to like the short ball play at some point, right?
Yeah. I think today he looked much better. I think that opening spell from him and Akashdeep really set up this innings. And even though Prasidh did not get early, like he didn't get a wicket in that first spell, but I think he did a very good job in creating that sort of pressure from one end. And he was not leaking runs, bowling that good length consistently, also inducing false shots. So I think I did like that bit from Prasidh. He is a talented, promising bowler, right? Just the thing is that right now he's far too erratic, I think, at this level to consistently be able to create pressure on the batting sides.
Yeah, completely agree with this. To answer Abhi's question, of course, he was there in the 2021 series.
He
He
was there
plays
in the Lords, just remember.
Lords and Headingley as well, right?
Headingley, exactly.
And
Yeah.
and then they move on from him, right?
Yeah. I would use Akashdeep and Bumrah as opening bowlers and use Siraj as a first change when the pitch settled down a bit using his seam skills. Yeah,
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I think that's fair.
completely agree.
Yeah, yeah,
But you
definitely
also
see
had
the
a plan, right?
arguments in
Like
there, right?
the way you were talking about it, how they can share the new ball. Well, can you
Yes,
like
yes,
explain
yes.
that a bit?
Of course, of course. So my plan, right? I need people in the comments to listen. I'd actually use Bumrah as the first change bowler. I'd give Prasid and Siraj both, like, let's say 3 to 4 overs up front each, right? And then if they're not doing anything, I'd immediately bring Bumrah on. So because Bumrah would still be bowling with like a brand new ball, and it's almost kind of like use Bumrah the same way like Australia used Pat Cummins, right? Because Pat Cummins, like you could argue, should be using the new ball, but they're like, well, we think Stark needs the new ball. We think Josh Hazelwood's very good with the new ball. We'll use Cummins as the new ball bowler when Stark isn't always on it, right? And he is a lot of the time. Cummins usually comes in the 7th, 8th over to bowl,
Yeah,
right? Doesn't he? So I actually think it could work quite well. Also, I don't think Bumrah's that good with the new ball,
Yeah.
anyways. It's not his strength. I don't think he's very good when controlling the swing. Right? It wasn't even in Australia. It wasn't until this series he actually figured out how to bowl with the new ball in Australia. Right? It took him a long time to figure that out. I always don't always think he knows what he's doing with the new ball. That makes sense if you're like a subcontinent bowler, right? That you almost like learn the reverse swing before you learn conventional swings. That there's probably like the only limitation in his
exactly.
you have to say in his skill set. It would be like just new ball bowling, isn't it? What do you reckon?
Yeah. Whenever we talk about Bumrah compared to like the other all-time greats and everything, I think this is the one point that often comes up that okay, he's not as elite a new ball bowler compared to say a Glenn McGraw or maybe even Malcolm Marshall.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Right.
Like, I don't think it's as bad in Test cricket as it is in ODI and T20. That's where I think he's
Completely
much
agree
worse with the new ball because he's a defender, but he's not like a threat with the wickets, is he? So Abhi's saying,
Yeah.
okay, all they need is a Arshdeep, so they have a rough on both sides. No need for Bumrah in the next game. Okay, that might be too rogue for my liking.
Yeah. So I was just looking at the pitch map for Akashdeep in this inning. So he gets 6 wickets, right? And he goes for 99 runs in 21.1 overs. So 3 of his wickets came at a good length, and 2 wickets came at short of a good length or short length. So you know like the sort of bowler that he's like shaping up to be, and he's really good at just consistently hitting that length, and he can even bring the stumps into play, but he has also shown that he can get the outside edge of the batter. So I think that's a pretty valuable skill to have. And I think in our group it was Rakshit who was talking about how he compares with Shami in terms of like the prototype of a bowler that he is. So what were your thoughts on that?
I can see why people think that. I think it's different to Shami because Shami usually has a more perfect seam presentation, where he almost like with him it's almost like his seam slightly wobbles. He's not necessarily trying to bowl a wobble ball, whereas Akash looks to be deliberately bowling the wobble ball. So Shami would probably be. So again, like Shami is like a classic subcontinent seamer, right? He's almost that where you're like because he's so used to bowling on like low bounce Asian wickets, he just bowls the natural back of the length and hopes for the low bounce, which sometimes did cause his downfall in Senna because he couldn't adjust to that length. So Akash, one of the reasons I think Akash would have like an advantage over Shami is Akash, again, the wobble ball is such an important skill in England, especially because we were talking about this. India doesn't really have a lot of wobble ball bowlers, right? Everyone else usually bowls swing. The other one would be like Anshul Kamboj, and I don't think the team management probably rate him that highly. And I also don't know how you'd get in, right? He almost seems like if he is a new ball bowler as well, that's all too many new ball bowlers. They need someone to bowl first change, don't they?
Yeah, I agree with you completely. But I do think Siraj as the first change also works well simply because of the fact that, Siraj's new ball numbers haven't really been that impressive in recent times. And I think this match at least he's done pretty well with the new ball, especially in the first innings. And even in this innings, he managed to get the wicket of Crawley, although that was a very very wide ball. And, bit of like you could argue that it was Crawley's mistake, like not really a great delivery from Siraj. And Duckett also takes him for a few runs at the start. So I think I'm pretty confident in saying that Siraj can be a solid first change bowler.
Yeah, completely. Especially when we don't really know which version of Siraj will turn up, right? So
yeah, but I was very impressed with him in this test match, and we'll talk about him a bit, I think.
So we'll just take a quick fire break, and then we'll just answer a few questions in the chat.
Cricket boards actually make watching their games almost impossible. I spend almost as much time trying to find where I can view it as I do actually following the action. That is why I use NordVPN. They let me find all the cricket I want to watch while protecting me from the nasty side of the internet. Nord will free your cricket matches. Grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/good areas to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 additional months on top. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Watch every match with NordVPN.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the third innings. And so we'll just answer a few questions that you guys have in the chat, right? You good
Yeah.
with that? So
Yeah,
Madan is saying unpopular opinion. Brooke is hardly a generational talent, and England just can bully teams on dead tracks. Okay, like it was a dead track, and they didn't bully them. So I think it's just like I understand that he's vulnerable on moving pitches. Like that's fair enough to say, and we know he has glaring weaknesses versus spin. But he's still generational, right? As I was mentioning, like if you average 60 with a strike rate of 19 ODI cricket right now, you'd be one of the best batsers in the world. He's doing it
Yeah.
in Test cricket. Be flat pitches or not, like no one's done that in like. Well, is Virendra Sehwag not a good batter? Because he only made runs on flat pitches. He doesn't make runs when the ball moves either, does it? Right?
Yeah.
Like Sehwag obviously is an elite player of spin, so he has that
Yeah.
over Brook, right? We've seen batters like this before. If you're an attacking batter, you usually don't do that well when the ball moves. Or there's a reason he's batting at 5 in this batting order.
Fully agree with you. Yeah, I think people, again, Indian fans, I feel, have been a bit too harsh on Harry Brook, but now he has played 2 very good knocks in this series already, right? And yeah, he gets a great ball in this innings to get out. Like, I don't know how many batters in the world are going to play a ball which has that much seam movement. And yes, Harry Brook hasn't, like, a lot of his runs have come in England on good batting surfaces, in Pakistan on good batting surfaces, even New Zealand, I think, at times. But even in New Zealand, he has done well when he has had early entry points. And in Test cricket in general, he has a very good record whenever he comes in early. He almost has a similar record whenever he comes in early or he comes in late. So, I mean, there isn't really too much to, point out. Of course, I do believe that if he played that series in India, his average would probably be quite a bit lesser, simply because we know he's not an elite player of spin. Like, he's not a good player of spin yet. Although I think that is also something like how old is he right now? 26, 27 years old?
I don't even know if
He should get better, bro. Like, and
Yeah,
the guy
he's
is
26.
averaging almost 60 in Test cricket at a strike rate of nearly 90. So
He's
I think we
unbelievable.
do have to
isn't
give him
it,
some
right?
credit for it.
Yeah, I do think it's like with the whole like skipping the Indian series because like I don't even understand why people are upset with him. Like, didn't his grandmother die or something? Right? Yeah, it's that like him skipping the IPL and then saying like, oh well, India just has bad air quality or something. A bad mix of things for him. Like I think Indian fans just hated him after that, right? So it's just like
Yeah.
Plus, also like
I
no
get
one
that.
likes English cricketers. I think just because of how like the whole colonial masters type thing as well, right? So
Yeah.
DF has an interesting question. What changes would you make from an India and England perspective? I think we talked about this from the Indian perspective. The obvious one is Bumrah comes back for Prasid.
Yeah.
Batting, I wouldn't change anything. I know people are like, oh well, Nitish should go out, and I'm like, I didn't have Nitish in my original 11, but I'm like, just give play someone for 2 tests in a row in some position, please. Right? You
Agreed.
can't keep changing 3 and 6 like this, right?
Hmm.
And would you get Kuldeep in for the next test? I don't think they will.
I don't think they will now, especially because Washington, he's had a decent
Yeah.
test with the bat, and of course, he took the wicket of Ben Stokes as well. So they will have that thing in mind probably that he could be like a useful matchup against the 2 left-handers in England's team. So I would bring Kuldeep in for sure. There is no doubt about it. And I actually think DOF brings a very valid point about Harry Brook as well, that he does have a few dropped catches that make him doubt. I think this also happens with Marnus Labuschagne, right? Like at the start of his test career. So I just interrupted the previous point because I think this was a very interesting comment. I
think that's fair.
wanted to go
That's
to
fair.
it.
I think
Yeah.
that's fair. So continuing on this, what were you saying about the changes?
So yeah, as I said, like I would just get Kuldeep Yadav in for Washington Sundar, and quite simply, Bumrah comes back in for Prasid.
So let's say they do stick with Washington. Do you think they are brave enough to, let's say, just go, we don't need Nitish's bowling, we'll bring Jarrell in as a batter?
Or maybe Bumrah comes in. Someone points that out as well, right? Bumrah comes in for Nitish.
Oh, good God. How would that even work?
Washington and Jadeja
Oh,
can bat
okay.
at 6 and 7, right?
Right.
That is an interesting team. I wouldn't say I hate it. four specialist fast
I don't
bowlers.
hate it as much as having Nitish at 6. I will say that.
Yeah, bro, that is actually a pretty solid idea. I didn't actually think about
Yeah.
this combination all that much.
I don't trust. I think it's a weak 6 and 7. Like it's actually no, that's a lie. It's a decent 7, but it's a weak 6, whichever way you go with either of them. In that case, but that is
But I think,
very
like-
you get a lot of bowling out of it. So yeah.
Yeah, you get a lot of bowling, and then you get four specialist fast bowlers. And Prasid as the fourth seamer could actually be, used in bursts,
That is,
used
he's very
against
useful in those situations.
specific
right?
use cases for him. Maybe get him to bowl against the tail enders and stuff like that. So I do think in such cases, maybe but that's a bit too risky. I would still say go for Kuldeep Yadav instead of Washington Sundar, as I said. And yeah, Bumrah comes in for Prasid, and that's a pretty good matchup. That's
And
a
if
pretty
you
good
really
lineup
want
to
to
have.
Jurel for Nitish, right? Like at 6.
Yeah.
Like if you really, really want to. And see, from an England point of view, I think they'll change pace attack because I think they're just exhausted now. So I 100%
Carr
think
especially.
Jofra will come in. I think Jofra will come in. Who else do you
Mark
think?
Wood?
Do you think they will finally drop Zach Crawley for Jacob Ethel?
They might just do it now, right? Because Crawley's form has now been a major cause for concern, and like he has the lowest average of any opener in Test history at this point. So I don't really know, dude. Like Jacob Bethel, from whatever I've seen, maybe I have an RCB bias for him, but whatever I've seen of him in Test cricket, he does seem like a very solid player. He does have a good, solid technique and everything. And I did see him bat in New Zealand as well a bit. So it could be interesting, but even then, it's still a bit of a makeshift option, right? Maybe they also go like, okay, we don't want to change set plan that we already have for the opening this thing. So not too bad.
So and bowling, I think so. Jofra, I think.
What
will
about
come
Mark
in.
Wood?
He's not fit yet, I believe.
Someone I think points out that he'll only play in the 5th match. I haven't
that's
fact
what I
checked
heard
this
as
yet,
well.
so it could be true.
I
But
think that's what I heard as well from them, is that he'll play the 5th match. Is Atkinson fit?
Fair
If he is, I think he'll play.
if he is fit, he has to play. He was like brilliant
He's
in the
fit.
last English summer, right? So he can
And
come
if
back in straight.
maybe they bring in Jamie Overton if they want more batting. Like maybe, I don't know. Like if they're going,
Not
the
so sure
brain's
about
thinking of
that.
it. Yeah, I don't really know. I think the one thing I'm sure of is they'll definitely replace like 1 or 2 of their bowling, just because I think they just need their break at this point. I think Castle will break if he bowls again.
Yeah, I also completely
So
agree.
we actually have a couple of super chats. Stokes is currently the most annoying, overrated, and irritating player in the world. Flat pitches and funky fields doesn't make one great captain. Okay, so how do we break this? Let's just answer this in 2 parts, right? So let's talk about Stokes the player. I agree he's overrated. What do you think? I think in general, I think people overrate his batting.
Yeah,
The
I do
amount of
think he's
times
a
that
bit
people-
overrated as a test batter specifically, like because he has played so many great like those moments. Ben Stokes is a player of moments, but I don't really think he's the sort of batter that you can trust to be like. Even if you say like the current versions, let's say I'm not saying overall, but say we compare the current version of Jadeja versus the current version of Stokes, would you not rely on Jadeja across conditions more? Like that
With the
Jadeja
bat,
can at
yeah,
least hold
probably
an
you would.
Yeah,
Yeah,
with the bat,
definitely,
exactly.
completely agree with
So
you. And
so
I
I
think
think-
his
I do
bowling's
think there's
probably
an
just
element
much
of
better than
Stokes
his
being-
batting at this point.
sorry.
I think his bowling's much better than his batting at this point.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, so
And then
even I
let's-
do think
so
he's a
the
bit overrated as a test player, test batter specifically. And against spin,
if
I
we go
feel
to his-
I was talking to Jared about this. I just feel like for a player of his stature, he's just far too limited against spin. You just know he's going to get out. He doesn't have too many scoring options. He's either going to go block, or he's going to inside edge, outside edge, all that sort of stuff. Or he will miss the ball, or he will just keep trying those reverse sweeps randomly. And it's just going to end up in a clueless sort of a situation for him. So I also completely agree that, yeah, purely as a batter, and then annoying and all. I don't know about all of that. What do you say?
Yeah,
I think the
he's
hype
annoying.
around
Do you think he plays
sometimes
he plays
the
a
hype
character.
around these players. Sorry,
I think he
go
plays
on.
a character. I think he's playing a character as a captain. He's purposefully trying to be the villain. And I think I still think he's a great captain. I don't think he's always had the greatest resources, because it's like, look at the bowling attack we're talking about, right? It's what Cars and then Josh Stung. He's not got like Pat Cummins and Josh Hazelwood in his arsenal, has he? He's not got like a Bumrah. He's made Shoaib Bashir like a decent test bowler, right? Like
At least
Bashir
before
has
this
got
series.
No bowling yeah, at least before the series, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's a very good captain, definitely, and we have to give him credit for the vision. I think sometimes for the on-field stuff, he does go a bit too overboard, and maybe at times, his tactics are a bit too funky and everything. But Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I do think, considering the situation England were in before he took over, so we do have to give him some credit. Another criticism of Stokes' captaincy for me has to be like that they don't take the WTC final all that seriously, and they're not really bothered about over rates and all that sort of stuff. So I don't really like that. Also rubs me off a bit in the wrong way. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There is a sense of elitism there, isn't there? From that, I don't know if that's Stokes or necessarily, or if it's just the like ECB in general who just don't care. It's like maybe Rob Key and Stokes in general.
Who
Right?
knows about that?
All right, so we got another super chat from Sunov and Kunov. I don't know how the hell do you say it. So should Jamie Smith bat up the higher up the order? Yeah, we were just talking about this earlier. The answer is yes. Like he should be batting
Yeah,
above Stokes
completely.
at least, and I think he has a good enough ceiling to bat even higher up the order later. Once maybe spots open up. Let's say they give up on Ollie Pope or like Joe Root retires. One of those situations. So Madan says he thinks the best batsman from this English team is still Ben Duckett. Plays both pace and spin well. Doesn't have a single glaring weakness and can score at a brisk pace well. Extremely like hot take when Joe Root exists. Do you think?
Yeah. But I would be willing to understand that. I would be willing to get the argument that he is better than Harry Brook, I think. I don't
I
think
think
he's better
that's
than
fair.
Root, but better than Brook, I can agree. Even though the averages and all, they won't show that one is an opener, one is a number 5. And Duckett has obviously shown that he can make runs in India. He has done very well at home also. Like, so I think on form only. I mean,
I
it's
think
just
that's-
2 games for Joe Root. Maybe
He's
you
got
have a
150
point,
as
but
well. He's got 150
yeah,
in there as
fourth
well,
innings
does
he did get runs.
Again,
I think
I
this
was just
always
saying,
happens.
like,
Joe Root,
mm,
I've seen this with Joe Root that sometimes he has like a couple of two or three quiet test matches, but then eventually he will just come back and start making big runs. I've seen this trend so many times. Like in this entire decade, the 2020s, this happens quite a bit.
he did that in the India series, no? Like versus England, where he just doesn't make runs in the first 2 or 3 tests, then makes runs at Ranchi. No runs. Is it Ranchi he makes it or Rajkot? Which one am I thinking?
Rajkot, I think, Duckett, right? Oh, sorry,
No,
Joe
not
Root,
Duckett,
Ranchi,
Root.
Ranchi. My bad,
Ranchi,
yeah.
yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it was Ranchi. Brilliant innings at Ranchi, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So that I think also like I would not be surprised if Root makes 100 on the toughest pitch of the series. Would not be surprised in the least, for no one else from England has made runs.
Absolutely.
Right? What do you reckon?
Yeah. He will do that. If it's a bowler friendly wicket, I think it is going to be Joe Root who will make 120 runs out of their 250 team totals. So I think that, I mean, you know that with great players, that is always, specifically on tough wickets. And with Root also, we've seen it across conditions. So as Abhi says, he wants a challenge, guys. This is all just too easy for him. All these easy batting wickets. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he tries, does he? Like that's if it's a road, I don't think he always tries.
Oh, you know what? There's an interesting comment, I think, about Jimmy Anderson, and someone was saying that Ben Stokes did get rid of one of his big resources in Jimmy Anderson. So, what are your thoughts on that, Varun?
Yeah, again, I think Jared talked about it a lot, where it's like they could have just still used Jimmy occasionally. You didn't need to. I understand not using him in every test match because you still need some experience, right? Like they could have just gone, okay, we'll only use you in
Yeah.
England. Why don't you just stay with this team and just guide this team, right? Just play 1 or 2 test matches a summer. That's all, right?
Yeah. I think, and it's a similar logic I think Jared uses for Ashwin as well, right? Like maybe try and maximize the talent of these players you don't. But I know another issue that comes is that with such big names, it's probably harder to have those discussions with them and say that, okay, you're not going to play every single match because they're such competitors. You would be like, okay, out of 5, just play 2 or 3 games, like in specific conditions, we'll use you. Maybe it doesn't sit with them also the right way. Maybe having those conversations is easier said than done. Like on the outside, we can say it, but maybe, otherwise it's a bit harder. So,
Yeah, I think we saw that with Ashwin as well, right? Maybe they had that conversation and Ashwin just didn't like it. Right? I think
possible.
he's
Because you
probably the
remember
closest
Washington
example.
plays at Perth, right? Instead of Ashwin.
Yeah, so I think Sadia says Deep Stenfer on that wicket deserves more massive props. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I just thought it was fantastic on an absolute road. Like we saw this, right? England bowlers just got nothing from that wicket, and Deep looked like he was bowling on a different pitch. And even in the second innings, Siraj just did not look as threatening as he was in the first. And Deep was arguably even more threatening in the second innings. Do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think his second innings effort might actually be, like the best spell of anyone, simply because of how many Jaffas he was producing, and he was constantly, keeping the English batters on their toes and creating pressure because of constantly hitting at that right length and causing issues. Yeah.
So Vignesh, so finally this will be the last question for today, because since Jared and Behram will be doing a live tomorrow reviewing the test match. Vignesh says Gill's captaincy is a bit average, is what I feel. Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't think he's not like a tactical genius, if that's what people expect from him, right? There is, I think Jared mentioned that he telegraphs his moves. I thought he was much better in the second innings, but yeah, I don't think it comes now. He's not like a Stokes, or he's not gonna put an umbrella field or something. If you want funky fields, you won't get that from Shubman Gill, right? He's not that kind of captain.
Very formulaic captain in a sense. I don't think he has made any massive blunders so far. Maybe they could have declared early, especially with the threat of rain today. It did seem like, okay, did they bat on for a bit too long when it was raining? I'm sure many Indian fans must have been worrying about that. So yeah, I do think there is an element of, but he's just starting out, like 2 tests for him, a couple of seasons in the IPL as well. Let's give it some time and see what he goes with. But I do hope that, first of all, and he has also pointed this out, for him making runs is the most important thing right now. He needs to just have that one big massive series with the bat, and he's absolutely on course to having that now. Even if he makes 6 ducks, he still ends up with 585 runs. So I think just one last closing question, I think, and then of course Jared and Behram will also be talking about this. So do you think Gill has it in him to break Bradman's record?
No, I don't think so. Because I think we'll get one tough pitch where I think he'll get out cheaply, and then we'll come back to the same question: is he just a flat pitch bully? And then it's 400 runs is still a lot of runs, right? In 3 test matches. Like again, I'm 100%.
I think it's tough.
Like
definitely.
There'll be a tough pitch, he'll get out, and then we'll see the overreaction from Indian Twitter and Indian social media where they're like, "Is Gill washed?" So this is why you shouldn't hype players up so quickly and all of that nonsense. I do think for his sake, I hope there's a tough pitch and he grinds the runs out. Like we talked about this, like 70 of 180 type scores, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like he just needs to do something like that. I think I don't even care if he makes 100 or whatever. Like even I would also say that right now I'm also not very convinced about him on tough wickets. Although he has done well on some tough wickets at home. In particular, if you remember that 4th innings chase in Ranchi, then he made that 90 at the Wankhede as well in that Test series versus New Zealand, the whitewash series. And I think apart from that, there's another in South Africa he got 30 odd in the Test match where basically India lost 6 wickets for no runs, and it was Virat, Rohit and Gill who got some runs in that first innings for India. So speaking of, I think I've seen like signs that Gill can do well on tough wickets as well, but maybe it won't be as consistent as say it is for a player like a Jaiswal or maybe even KL Rahul for that matter. But I think I'll be patient and let's see how it goes. But you need players who can make big runs on flat wickets.
As Dio says, England's bowling probably only gets better from now on, doesn't it?
Fair enough, that also. Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to this and also just following along with the both of us for the last 5 days. We'll probably be back for the 3rd test, and then we may or may not experiment with a live before the toss, so we can just talk about like the selection or nonsense and all of that things as well. Again, thank you so much for listening to us. Make sure to bookmark goodareas.co. It's the one-stop shop for everything. And remember, for fuck's sake, we have a final super chat. So, should Joe Root be dropped? No. Of course not. What's wrong with you? What the hell is wrong with you people? Did the flat pitch just fry everyone's brain? It definitely fried mine.
He's probably just trolling, bro. Relax.
I know. Yeah. So what was I going to say? I already forgot. So I was doing the outro. Right. So remember, Jared and Behram will be doing a review of this test match. So any questions you have, do reserve it for tomorrow. And finally, complain about how bad Shayan and I were as well. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.
Brian Lara used pot plants to work on his placement. John Wright glued his glove to his bat. Sachin Tendulkar dug up practice pitches. Tatenda Taibu cut the top off his bat. Claire Taylor used a hockey grip. Steve Smith was from tennis. Dean Jones would call phantom runs. And Victor Trumper turned the nets into a war zone to survive. The best batters in the world do whatever they have to make runs. We have told their stories in our new book, The Art of Batting.